over the last few days, 5 Just Stop Oil protesters, including one of its co-founders, have been jailed, with one sentenced to 5 years and the others to 4 years. What were they guilty of? They were all found guilty of conspiring to organise protests blocking the M25 motorway for 4 successive days in November 2022. And a number of people have been protesting about that outside the courts. One of them is our next guest, Chris Packham, who everybody is familiar with, broadcaster, naturalist and environmental campaigner. Chris, thank you for joining us. Right, I'm going to lay my cards on the table. I don't necessarily agree with Just Stop Oil and the manner in which they protest. However, I could not believe the sentencing and the circumstances of the evidence they were not allowed to put forward to the jury in this case. Can you run us through that, Chris, please?
Yeah, I think I can. And firstly, I think it's really important that we say that at the moment, the laws that we're about to speak about are being applied to climate activists, in this case, Just Stop Oil. But those laws are in place and they could impinge upon the civil liberties of anyone. So
literally anybody. Yep.
Yeah, whilst at the moment we are protesting about climate, this could be gender rights, this could be the right to strike, this could be health, it could be education, Absolutely. It could be anything in the near future. The laws are not specifically there to be punitive to climate protesters in isolation. In simple terms, these 5 people have been given disproportionately high sentences, the highest that we've ever seen for peaceful protest in the UK, certainly since the 1930s. I think that it amounts to harassment and intimidation of climate protesters. They're trying to keep us off of the streets. And it follows in the wake of laws that were, Liberty have taken the former government to court. Suella Braverman put those laws in place. Yes. The Police Crimes Courts and Sentencing and Courts Bill, which came up with the phrase public nuisance. But it's ambiguous in its context, and this provides difficulties for both the protesters, knowing how far they can go, and, of course, for the police, knowing when they should and could properly arrest them. They then find themselves in court, and in court, judges have taken to the habit of forbidding the juries to quit on the basis of their conscience, and that's something that's been enshrined in UK law since the 1600s. It's a key part of our democracy. And in the case of these climate protesters, another habit that's crept into the courts is that judges are forbidding them for saying what motivated them to make the protest in the first place. So therefore, the context of their protest is not available to the jurors to be considered. Now, in this case, when we're talking about the context of climate breakdown, it is, of course, the most serious issue in our species' history. You only need to look at social media today to see that many parts of the world are on fire or underwater. And that people are being displaced, people are going hungry. And whilst football didn't come home this summer, Carol, climate breakdown very soon will come to the UK in a much harsher form than we're experiencing at the moment. So it is something we need to address. These people are basically, they are raising the alarm. They're not fanning the flames. And it's hard to stomach the persecution that they're currently suffering when you think that the large fossil fuel industry, those people who have posted record profits for the last 2 winters, that have plunged our pensioners into the cold because they can't pay their energy bills, as a legacy of the fact that we have this grotesque dependence on fossil fuels when we should have, as Just Stop Oil have constantly reminded us, made a just transition towards renewable energies. That's where we stand. So it's a complex of things. It's a punitive law about protest, and it's judges acting inappropriately in those courts. And I should say, when I say inappropriately, this is not Chris Packham speaking. This is the UN. The UN have openly criticised the UK government on a number of occasions now for transgressing our fundamental human rights when it comes to these types of
Chris, can I just pause you there? Because there will be a lot of people, as you know, it's been debated on the radio over the last few days, who just go, oh, Just Stop Oil, oh, they're this, they're that, or they're that. It's really, for me, about this broader context, which is, let's say it's somebody who wanted to protest that they wanted the monarchy to have some other form and not be a part of the constitution as they are now, let's say. And that's a growing number, for instance. it's the fact that these new laws, introduced, as you rightly say, by Suella Braverman when she was Home Secretary, for others who may want to protest, they may want to strike, they may want to do all sorts of different things. It's that really that concerns me. Can you just repeat what you said about that?
Well, you're absolutely right, Carol. You're hitting the nail on the head. Climate activism may irritate and annoy you.
Yeah.
Just Stop Oil are trying to find media space to get their message across. It's very difficult with the right-wing media who constantly belittle them as eco-zealots and the eco-mob, etc. But we have to stress, as you have, that this is a far bigger issue.
It is a bigger
issue. The way
issue.
that these laws have been drafted is such that they are there to punish anyone who wants to protest about anything. The method of that protest is becoming increasingly difficult. The idea being, when they were drafted and manipulated illegally, I should add, by Suella Braverman, because Liberty took the government to court. They won their case because, if you'll recall, she couldn't get that amendment to the law across the line, couldn't get it through the laws. It was toing and froing the whole time, couldn't get it through Parliament, and so they enacted the Henry VIII clause, where basically they can push the law through without a democratic process. Liberty took them to court. They were found culpable of that. What's interesting, though, Carol, is this week, the former government appealed the day before they announced the election. And this week, Yvette Cooper has to make her mind up whether this government sustains that appeal or they just chuck it out and say we're going to go back to basics.
Well, that would be an interesting thing, and I'm sure you'll be on lots of media discussing that, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your time. It is a terrific, this broader context, whatever you think about the methods of Just Stop Oil, for me, this is about the much broader context, as Chris Packham rightfully said there.
Click here for Batshit Cleverly trying to scare you silly about migrants.